Thanks for your company tonight from the very late team here on BBC Two. We'll say goodnight, and for the next hour, we join BBC Parliament.
Order. Questions to the Secretary of State for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy. Ben Howlett.
Question number one, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Speaker. And with your permission, I'll answer this question together with questions 10 and 13. Since I was appointed on the 14th of July, during the summer, my colleagues and I have met with businesses, investors, workers and local leaders in all four home nations, as well as travelling to India and Japan. Furthermore, and for the first time, each local enterprise area and each of the devolved administrations will have a specific minister in my department assigned to them. Personal relationships matter in business, and that should start with the business department.
Ben Howlett.
I thank the Secretary of State for his answer and also welcome the whole team to the new department as well. The aerospace industry is absolutely vital to the West of England economy, not just for jobs but also for growth as well. And will the Secretary of State work with me in order to ensure that the entire aerospace industry receives the support that it requires and it deserves?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I certainly will do that. In fact, one of the biggest privileges of this job is to be reunited with aerospace, and I got to know the sector when I was Science Minister. And in fact, my first ministerial visit was with the breakfast with the Aerospace Growth Partnership at the Farnborough Air Show, where I ran into my right honourable friend. The West of England was very well represented there. Catherine Bennett of Airbus, for example, who I'm sure the honourable gentleman knows well, was one of the founder board members of the West of England LEP. This is a very important sector for the economy, and it will have my wholehearted support.
Kelly Tolhurst.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I too would like to pass on my welcome to the new ministerial team. I've had a number of correspondence from a few local businesses in Rochester and Strood, predominantly small, who have been trading with European partners over a long period of time, but have recently seen supply chain costs rise. Could my right honourable friend outline his commitment to supporting our small businesses in our new relationship with Europe to ensure that local and regional economies continue to grow?
I will indeed, and what I would say to my honourable friend, I know many of the small businesses in her constituency. Of course, through the British Business Bank, we've made over £3 billion available to smaller businesses. She will know that from April next year, the small business rate relief will double permanently, and that will benefit 60,000 small businesses. This is part of our continuing commitment to small business, which is the motor of the bigger businesses that generate so many jobs together with small businesses in our economy.
Caroline Ansell.
My own home constituency of Eastbourne and Willingdon, long established, beautiful seaside destination with big future ambitions, including for 2017, a new hot air balloon festival. Tourism is lifeblood to my town. And I am delighted today to be welcoming to Parliament the Eastbourne Hospitality Association. Can the Minister tell me if he has had discussions with the tourism industry around reducing the level of VAT on tourism services to bring us into line with competitor destinations in the EU and give our industry the competitive platform from which it can stimulate investment, create jobs, deliver growth and take full advantages of the opportunities in life after Brexit?
Yes.
Well, I'm grateful to my honourable friend, who's a big campaigner for the tourism industry, and I welcome, as I'm sure the whole House does, her visitors here today. We have the highest VAT threshold in the European Union here in the UK, so that many small businesses don't need to charge VAT. But of course, I will continue my discussions with her. The hot air balloon festival sounds a very tempting excursion, perhaps for many members in this House, and I look forward to continuing these discussions with her and her colleagues.
Mr. Derek Twigg.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Secretary of State agree with his right honourable friend, the member for North Somerset, that British business people are fat, overweight and spend too much time on the golf course?
And lazy.
And lazy.
Yeah.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I've yet to meet a lazy business person, starting with my own father, who's up before dawn every morning running his small business. My right honourable friend is right in reminding us that across the whole country, every business needs to work hard, as it does every day of the week. That is the secret of our competitive success, and that is the way that we will continue to prosper as a nation.
This is Sharon Hodgson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In light of comments made last week by the Japanese ambassador, the Secretary of State will be aware that Nissan, based in my constituency, contributes £2.1 billion to the UK balance of trade, and it exports 80% of all cars made at the plant in Sunderland. What opportunities does he see for automotive companies such as Nissan in a post-Brexit industrial strategy, and will he commit to meeting with Nissan as soon as possible?
Hear, hear.
I will not only make that commitment, but I can tell the Honourable Lady I've already done so and have indeed met the Japanese ambassador. The automotive sector and Nissan in particular is a hugely important and valued part not only of the Honourable Lady's constituency, but of the whole country, and it has our full-hearted support. The ambassador and I have met twice. I think it's very correct and encouraging that the Japanese ambassador, on behalf of the government, shares with us their priorities for our negotiation. That is exactly the sort of relationship that I hope and expect to have with our partners around the world.
Bradshaw.
But he will be aware of the great anger felt by Britain's wealth creators at the comments of his right honourable colleague. What conversations, not just to them, but to our reputation abroad, what conversations has he had specifically with his right honourable friend and with the Prime Minister about limiting the damage?
What I would say is that my right honourable friend has been vigorous during the summer in going around the world promoting the case for British business, as is his job, and members opposite will have the support of everyone in this House if they join the effort that we are making to promote the great opportunities already in this country and the further opportunities to come.
Chris Phil.
Speaker, Secretary of State, can I ask you if you agree that free trade is at the heart of a prosperous economy, and will you and your front-bench colleagues be resisting any attempts to impose any form of protectionism when we come to negotiating future trade arrangements?
Word "you" in the chamber. The debate goes through the chair. I'm not expressing any view on these matters, but I think I know what the honourable gentleman had in mind. Secretary of State.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I think free trade courses through the veins of this country. It is one of the reasons that we've been most successful. And I was surprised last week to hear a commitment to free trade described as dogma. I think it is one of our strengths, and he has our absolute assurance that this will be very much to the fore of our reputation in the future as well as the past.
Bill Esterson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I welcome the Business Secretary to his new post? He certainly has his work cut out. Australia says it's going to take at least 3 years after Brexit before a trade deal can be in place with the UK, while the United States, Japan and China have all expressed their views about the prospects for foreign investment and trade with the UK. So can he tell us what he is doing to get behind UK businesses and deal with the concerns of our international partners following the Brexit vote? And can I say to him that he could do better, could not do better than start by telling his cabinet colleagues to get behind business and stop insulting them?
Well, I'd be interested in the support of the party opposite for promoting British business around the world, and he will know from our previous work on local growth, he will always have a willing ear and assistance from me in doing that. He was kind enough to welcome me. Can I welcome the front bench team opposite that's been formed? I have to say the honourable gentleman who was my shadow in my DCLG role has followed me here. Perhaps not so much the shadow as a stalker, but I regard it as flattery. I think it is important, as I said in my initial answer, that relationships are important. You can exchange letters, you can exchange bits of paper, but I think it's important that you get to know well our partners around the world. I've done that, my colleagues have done that. As I said earlier, I visited our investors and manufacturers in Japan and in India, and I will continue to do so.
Lucy Fraser.
Very grateful, Mr. Speaker. Cambridge is a net contributory to the Treasury, with 20,000 businesses generating revenues of over £30 billion. We have had meetings cross-party as local politicians with business leaders about the implications of Brexit for our local economy. Will the Secretary of State visit the Cambridge Science Park in my constituency to discuss the implications?
Well, as my honourable friend knows, I am a frequent and enthusiastic visitor to Cambridge. It is one of the important features of our industrial strategy is to have a clear recognition of the contribution and the local leadership that different places bring. I've appointed the Minister of State as the lead liaison with Cambridge, but of course I'd be very happy to visit myself in future.
I too welcome the Secretary of State and his team to their positions. I would agree that there are some challenges, one of which is the ballooning trade deficit, which in Q2 of this year increased to £12.3 billion, a problem that is unlikely to be solved by withdrawal from the single market. Scotland voted to remain. Scottish business wants unhindered access to that single market. Will the Secretary of State support that, or is he in favour of the full English Brexit?
Can I welcome the Shadow Minister to State, and I think many of us on this side of the House were impressed by his contribution in the debate last week, a clear rising star. He will know that I will work very closely, and the Prime Minister has committed to work closely with the devolved administrations to make sure that our negotiating mandate reflects the needs of all parts of the United Kingdom. It was a United Kingdom decision to come out of the European Union, and we will make the most of it together.
Callum McKay.
Secretary of State for his answer. The Scottish Government analysis in terms of the UK withdrawal from the European Union is it could cost the Scottish economy at best £1.7 billion per year and at worst £11.2 billion a year. Again, I repeat, will he make the case from his department for continued membership of the single European market?
Of course, I made clear in my answer earlier that free trade is what we want to see in this country, and in furthering our discussions, not only with the leaders of the devolved administrations, but with our business investors around the world, we will make sure that the negotiating mandate that we have is ambitious and will secure the brightest possible future for the whole of the United Kingdom.
Angela Crawley.
Mr. Speaker.
With your permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll answer this question together with question 4. I said on the 28th of July that the government would carefully consider all of the component parts of the Hinkley Point C proposed project before reaching a decision on whether to agree the proposed contract for difference. We've been doing just that, and as the Prime Minister told the House last Wednesday, a decision will be taken this month.
Angela Crawley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On my recent summer surgery tour of my constituency of Lanark and Hamilton East, a number of constituents raised concerns about the cost to the taxpayer of the Hinkley Point C development. Barclays estimated that even if EDF delivers 4 years late and 25% over budget, it would still make a profit on the deal, with the deficit being picked up over the next 35 years by ordinary people. Does the Minister think that such a gratuitous public subsidy provides value for the taxpayer?
Yeah. Well, as I said to the Honourable Lady in my answer, we're looking at all components of the deal, and we'll make our decision before the end of the month. But I do think it is a responsible act on the part of the government to consider our energy supplies for the future in the long term. I know the Scottish Government has turned its face against new nuclear. We regard that as an important part of a diverse energy mix that gives resilience to UK consumers.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Given that the Brexit vote has thrown the energy sector into further uncertainty, and given that we know that energy from renewable sources will actually be cheaper than nuclear by the time Hinkley is completed, is it not now time for the UK Government to follow Scotland's example and end this unreasonable love affair with nuclear energy and embrace cheaper, safer and more plentiful alternatives.
Well, Mr. Speaker, Sir Winston Churchill said that in energy, diversity and diversity alone is the foundation for security. I think they were wise words, and I think we are wise to have a range of energy sources now and in the future, of course, including renewables.
Sir Gerald Howarth.
Mr. Speaker, may I say how strongly I support the Prime Minister's decision on this, given that China persists in trying to hack not only state agencies but our commercial companies, and has put two fingers up to the arbitration court in The Hague, which has ruled that their development for military purposes of uninhabited atolls in the South China Sea is unlawful. These are people with whom we should sup with a long spoon, and may I commend to my right honourable friend the paper written by the Intelligence Security Committee under Sir Malcolm Rifkin 3 years ago.
Well, I'm grateful to my right honourable friend for his comments. He will know that the commitment that we've made is to look at all parts of all components of the proposed deal and to make our decision very shortly. And of course, I'll report back to the House when we've done that and the reasons why we've taken whatever decision we do.
Sir Edward Lee.
The government is very wise to take a deep breath before committing itself to the massive cost of Hinkley. Evidence is mounting all the time in terms of new technology, in particular fusion rather than fission, mini reactors, battery storage. So I do commend the government for considering this decision very slowly indeed.
Well, I'm grateful to my right honourable friend. I think it is important for such an important decision to make sure that a new government looks at all of the components, looking to the future for our energy supply. As I say, I think it is important that we benefit from the full range of technologies, including some of the ones that he mentioned.
Right honourable gentleman already came in on question 1. I haven't forgotten it, even if he has. We'll save him up for later. We'll keep him in the microwave. Christina Rees.
Mr. Speaker, I congratulate Express Reinforcement ERL, based in my Neath constituency, who is the preferred supplier for 200,000 tonnes of reinforced steel provided by Celsa Cardiff through bylaw to build Hinkley Point C. I'm concerned Hinkley C has been hit by multiple setbacks and is on hold. Would the Secretary of State please update the House on the timetable? Do we need a Plan B or even a Plan C?
Well, the Honourable Lady is right that we, across all different forms of energy generation, we need to upgrade our capacity for energy generation, and doing that, which this government is determined to do, will have important advantages for other companies, including steel suppliers, right across the United Kingdom. In terms of the decision on Hinkley, we'll take it before the end of the month, as the Prime Minister has said.
Notwithstanding his earlier remarks, can my right honourable friend confirm that, as well as the proposed nuclear power station at Hinkley C, the other part of that package, which is a new Chinese-designed station at Bradwell-on-Sea, also remains very much on the table?
To my right honourable friend is that the decision is on the particular contract for difference with Hinkley Point C, and that is what we are reviewing, and we will come to take the decision when that review has been completed.
Barry Gardner.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I too welcome the front bench to their new positions, along with my stalker friend. After putting 25,000 highly skilled jobs at risk, after jeopardising 500 much-needed STEM apprenticeships, after offending the Chinese government and risking £18 billion of investment in the nuclear industry that is a vital part of our energy mix, after sending shockwaves through the investment community who now think the Prime Minister doesn't understand the meaning of final investment decision, does the Secretary of State agree with those in the industry who say that the Prime Minister's cautious approach now looks more like dithering?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I prefer the Prime Minister's cautious approach to the to the approach of the honourable gentleman, which is completely inconsistent as far as I can see. He criticises the government for reviewing, quite rightly, this important decision, but said at the same time that we should take 2 to 3 months seriously to review the decision. So there is a contradiction in his position. But it doesn't surprise me because it is the complete absence of an energy policy during the 13 years of the previous Labour government, in which we knew that nuclear power stations were going to come to the end of their life. They weren't replaced. This government is making decisions in a proper, serious way, making up for the lost time under the Labour years.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I'm delighted that the Prime Minister has asked me to lead the historic task of preparing a proper industrial strategy for this country. We have a once-in-a-generation chance to embrace the opportunities of our new global role and to upgrade our economy so that it works for everyone. We will work with the breadth of British industry, local leaders, innovators, employees and consumers to create the conditions for future success.
Nigel Huddleston. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. May I also take the opportunity to congratulate the entire frontbench teams on their appointment. The words industrial strategy often conjure up images of manufacturing and heavy industry. Can the Secretary of State confirm that the service sector, which is after all 80% of the British economy, will also be comprehensively covered in these industrial strategies?
I can indeed confirm that, Mr. Speaker. It seems to me that in projecting forward how we are going to earn our living as a nation, you look to your strengths, and it is absolutely the case that the service sector is one of our greatest strengths. And of course, we must create the conditions for that to continue to prosper in the future.
Ian Wright.
Mr. Speaker, may I also welcome the Secretary of State to what is a fantastic and ambitious, interesting and challenging brief. I wish him and his ministerial team all the best. Can the Secretary of State state precisely how this new industrial strategy marks a distinctive change in the government's approach to collaboration with business and intervention in the economy, or is it merely just a change to the nameplate at 1 Victoria Street?
It's certainly not that, and I would very much welcome the involvement of the new select committee, as I think will be formed, in making sure that we capture everything that we need to make a success of this. I don't think it is brand new in the sense that we build on success. As I said, we talked with the honourable gentleman's colleague about the automotive sector. We know that that has been a significant source of strength. The environment that we have created with the firms in the sector and with universities and scientific institutions has been crucial to its success. So we will build on those strong foundations and express very clearly our path for the future.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the government formulates its industrial strategy, can I urge my right honourable friend to look at the American Small Business Innovation Research Programme, which funds research at the critical stage after science and before commercialisation of technology, has spawned companies like Qualcomm, Jawbone and Tesla, and would he consider a UK equivalent?
Well, I'm very grateful to my honourable friend who is very well informed about this, the need to translate research success into small business success, and I'm sure we can talk further about it.
Chris Bryant.
I welcome the new team as well, though I suspect even the Secretary of State knows that this isn't going to be a full English Brexit, it's going to be a dog's Brexit. But anyway, on the... thank you very much, I'm here all week. Just on the... Absolutely right. On the industrial strategy, one of the real problems facing many parts of this country, as was revealed during the Brexit, during the referendum, was that many parts of are now post-industrial. The areas that had one industry, like tourism or iron and steel or coal or shipbuilding. Will he make sure that we take this opportunity to invest in those areas so that we can improve productivity, in particular in those forgotten areas?
Well, then they're not forgotten, and the honourable gentleman is the right honourable gentleman is very good at the one-liners, and the creative industries are an important source of strength, including comedians. But I would say to the honourable gentleman, if you look around the world at some of the most successful places, successful cities in particular, actually they have developed in a way that they have resilience through having different industries, even where there was a single dominant industry. And that is precisely why that we want to work with local leaders to make sure that we strengthen the resilience of our regional centres.
Well, welcome the new front bench, particularly the visiting Fellow of All Souls, who's appropriately the Minister for the Oxfordshire LEP, and the Minister for Consumer Affairs, who is a brilliant retweeter, particularly of my interview in today's Times. As part of the industrial strategy, I hope that my right honourable friend will recognise the importance of science and innovation. And in my constituency in Harwell, we are a microcosm of the future of Britain, linking science with high tech, and I hope it will feature strongly in his industrial strategy.
Mr. Speaker, it certainly will, and the strength of science, not least in Oxfordshire, is one of our national strengths, and it will absolutely be at the heart of our strategy.
Richie. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Secretary of State, how will he ensure that future industrial strategy is mindful of Northern Ireland's particular reliance on EU support and access to the common market?
Well, as I said earlier, we will make sure that we work with our colleagues across the United Kingdom. I had a very productive meeting with Simon Hamilton during the summer to make sure that we coordinate our efforts with those of policymakers in Northern Ireland. It needs to be joined up, it will be, and we will make sure that our negotiating mandate reflects contributions from across the UK.
Cricket.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I join with others in welcoming the front bench and the creation of a department which is going to do with industrial strategy. The country is very badly imbalanced at the moment, and we will support any realistic and thoroughgoing industrial strategy that's developed. But look, we know how the strategy has gone over the summer. BHS has gone bust, 11,000 jobs gone. Sports Direct paying less than minimum wage. World-leading company Arm, a homegrown British gem, sold overseas. And meanwhile, his colleague in Cabinet has talked down British businesses, calling our companies fat and lazy. And there's still no clear and unambiguous progress on the steel industry. It's been over 2 years since the consultation on steel pensions ended. When will he now make clear that the pensions of tens of thousands of loyal and hard-working steelworkers will be properly protected?
Well, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to the steel industry, it is a very important industry in our country. I grew up, as you know, in Teesside, where it was particularly prominent. I've had some very productive discussions during the summer, including visiting South Wales, to make sure that the government can give the right support to a sustainable future for the steel industry. They've been very constructive discussions, and I'm very happy to make sure that he is aware of them.
Jill Furness.
Number 5, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Solar deployment has been a real UK success story with almost 11 gigawatts of capacity now installed. Of course, it's appropriate to allow now for a period of stability following the changes made to protect consumer bills, but the Secretary of State continues to keep the performance of the feed-in tariff scheme under review.
Furness.
The PricewaterhouseCoopers reports in July showed almost 60% of companies are looking to diversify away from solar, and nearly 4 in 10 considering leaving the solar market entirely as a result of your policy changes. What steps will the Minister take to avoid business confidence in this important sector dropping further?
That's right. That's right.
Well, actually, there's a remarkably little sign that confidence is dropping in the sector. There is a recognition that those changes had to be made, and the sector has responded remarkably resiliently to the changes made. Let's not forget that they've also been spreading expertise in solar internationally as well, and that's another reason for thinking this is a real long-term success story.
Evan Hollin-Rake.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I welcome the new ministerial team to their new roles. Kingspan, who are a significant employer in my constituency, have contacted me regarding concerns about the revaluation of business rates for self-owned rooftop solar. The result is a 6 to 8-fold increase in rates. Would my right honourable friend agree to meet with me and representatives from the company to see how these effects can be mitigated?
Well, I'm grateful for the question. Kingspan's a company I know very well since it has a substantial operation in Herefordshire. Of course, it's right to acknowledge that valuations in this area are made by the Independent Valuation Office. The Department's liaising with the industry and the office on this issue, but I certainly would be delighted to meet with Kingspan and with him to discuss it.
Alan Whitehead.
On that matter, has the Minister done any analysis of the relationship of payback periods for commercial and rooftop solar, and particularly school solar, in relation to that proposed hike in business rates? And does he intend to change the tariffs if the proposed business rate revaluation comes into place?
I'd simply repeat that the matter is under review. We haven't seen what the agency proposes, and we'll look at it closely when we see what they have done.
Mary Gardner.
The Minister talks about stability, by which, of course, he's referring to a 93% drop in solar installations this year. After a 64% cut in subsidy to solar, an 8-fold hike in the proposed business rates, it would appear that the next attack on solar renewables is already being planned. Can the Minister confirm whether it is by incompetence or by calculation that changes to grid charges put forward by the regulator to end the unfair advantage to highly polluting diesel generators will in fact negatively impact on small-scale renewables like solar?
I think it's widely understood, Mr. Speaker, that the sector needed some changes to the feed-in tariffs because the effect of them was to hit consumers very hard in the pocket, and these charges are paid by consumers. Let's not forget that 99% of all solar panels installed have been installed over the last 6 years.
David Morris.
Number 6, Mr. Speaker.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I'll answer number 6 with question number 7. This government supports innovation through Innovate UK, soon to be part of UK research and innovation, and it's invested over £1.8 billion in innovation since 2007. Innovate is connecting businesses to local growth through its regional managers, and LEPs are supporting innovation through £200 million of local growth funding.
David Morris.
Speaker, as chairman of the Parliamentary Space Committee, the space industry has outgrown the economy by 10% all through the austerity years. The space industry is quite worried at this moment about the issues that could be caused through Brexit, even though ESA is outside of the European Union. Would the Minister please give us categoric assurance that the space industry and the aviation industry that's annexed to it will not be overlooked, especially in areas of the North West?
Thank you, Speaker. We certainly recognise the value of space to our economy, and we're working closely with industry to understand their concerns. I'm also working closely with colleagues across government to make sure we understand the impact of the referendum and all the opportunities associated with it, and we'll continue to do this as we shape our future relationship with the European Union.
Julian Sturdy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The success of our agricultural industry is dependent on the latest innovations in agricultural science and technology, driven forward by world-leading research centres like Ferrer on the outskirts of York. What assurances can the Minister give that agri-food research will continue to play an important role in the government's overall strategy for supporting innovation and ultimately delivering food security?
Speaker, this government is investing £160 million in agri-tech, including in centres for agricultural innovation, to ensure that our world-leading science is improving productivity on farms. In addition, a UK-wide food innovation network, which is to be launched very shortly, will give businesses greater access to technology and science.
Gregory Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Will the Minister ensure that the devolved legislatures right across the United Kingdom, the relevant ministers there, are brought together to ensure that best practice in innovation right across the United Kingdom is not just replicated, but is brought forward in each of the relevant sections across the UK?
Mr. Speaker, we're working closely with the devolved administrations as we put through the creation of UK research and innovation. Excellent science and innovation will be supported through this new body, and we look forward to continuing to fund excellence in science and innovation wherever it is found in the United Kingdom.
Chiomwera.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Innovation is key to our regional economies, helping to create the high-skilled, well-paid jobs. Innovation needs investment in research and development and small businesses to make a success of new ideas. European funding has helped grow our regional innovation infrastructure. The North East alone receives 130 million in research funding from now until 2020, while 72% of EU funding to UK businesses goes to small and medium-sized businesses. So will the Minister commit to matching the funding for innovation which currently comes from the European Union?
Mr. Speaker, we've been monitoring the impact, or any impact, on our research institutions and on businesses since the referendum, and the announcement on August the 13th by HM Treasury that it will underwrite for the life of the project all competitively bid for EU research funding that's applied for before departure shows our determination to take action wherever necessary to maintain the global competitiveness of the UK research base and of the innovative businesses that win bids there.
Andy Slaughter.
Question 8.
Consumer product safety is a government priority. We have an effective system of product recall and have established a steering group to consider recommendations in the Linfolds Woods 2016 product recall review. We will engage with the London Fire Brigade on their campaign as part of our regular dialogue with them.
Mr. We're aware of the major fire in the Shepherd's Bush tower block last month caused by one of an estimated 5 million defective Whirlpool tumble dryers. The tenant was in the same room as the dryer but could do nothing to stop the fire destroying her home and damaging 25 others. So does the Minister agree with that Whirlpool's advice that such dryers can continue to be used, if not unattended, is irresponsible and dangerous, and will she get it changed?
I was shocked to hear about the very serious fire in the Honourable Member's constituency, and I understand his concerns about the safety of tumble dryers. However, the advice being provided by Whirlpool is based on a full risk assessment of the products that has been agreed with Peterborough City Council Trading Standards, who are the lead enforcement authority for Whirlpool. Trading Standards will continue to monitor the situation and do have powers to order further action if they consider it appropriate.
Tumble dryer fires each day in this country, almost 2,500 since the start of 2012. Will the Minister ensure that there are fireproof labels on all tumble dryers with make, model, serial number, so that when fires do occur, they can be traced to the manufacturer?
I thank my honourable friend for his question. Although there have been these serious fires, they do actually represent less than 0.2% of the total numbers of tumble dryers sold. So we have to keep these things in perspective. And the Linfolds Woods review that have called, the review provides an overview of the current consumer product recall system, and the independent recall review group comprised of industry safety experts and the Chief Fire Officers Association will complete the work on these recommendations.
Chesty. Number 9, please, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, as a department, we are absolutely committed to ensuring only safe products are placed on the market, including laser pens. Given the risks associated with misuse of these pens, we are reviewing what more we can do to protect consumers and aircraft.
The Minister for that answer. In the last year, there was over 1,300 incidents where certain laser pens were used to target both civilian and military aircraft and transport infrastructure. Will the Minister support my private member's bill to regulate the sale of laser pens, which is supported by the British Airline Pilots Association?
Can I congratulate my honourable friend for his persistence and passion in pursuing this very important issue, because there are significant risks attached to misuse. Can I also assure him that the government is taking it very seriously, and there is a cross-Whitehall group looking urgently now at our options, including the case for further legislation, and I'm extremely happy in that context to meet him.
Mr. Barry Chairman.
Mr. Speaker, would the Minister help the leading manufacturer of laser pens in my constituency? He was a great supporter of the Northern Powerhouse, and he will be attending a Thursday's big conference in Yorkshire, supported by the All-Party Yorkshire Group, on innovation and creativity in Yorkshire. What he wants to know is why Lord O'Neill was suddenly pulled as a Speaker, no substitute was offered, and we hear that the government will not have anything to do with elected mayors or Northern Powerhouse. What's the situation now?
In relation to laser pens, rather than the speaking engagements or otherwise of Lord O'Neill.
I congratulate the Honourable Gentleman, Mr. Speaker, on his ingenuity in bringing a question I know he was frustrated not to be able to answer in the previous section. But let me take this opportunity to refute absolutely any suggestion the government has lost any commitment to the Northern Powers. In terms of the specific speaking engagement, if you'd like to speak to me afterwards, I can try and throw some light.
Well, there's a well-known exponent of what I might call the shoehorning technique. Whatever he wants to raise, he shoehorns into a question somehow. He could probably write a book on the subject, and probably will. Christian Matheson.
Question 11, sir.
Well, I welcome the question from a colleague I've enjoyed watching at work as his incisive questioning on the Culture, Media and Sport Committee, Mr. Speaker, tragically is about to direct that questioning to me. I can assure the Honourable Gentleman that the Department has received a copy of the PricewaterhouseCoopers report and carefully noted its findings. As I have said, this has been a great success story over the past few years. The goal now that costs have been brought under control is to try to move the industry towards the capacity to deliver without subsidy.
Christian Matheson.
I thank the Minister for the generous comments he made and also for his time chairing my select committee, and I wish him well in his new role. The PwC report does suggest that an estimated third of solar jobs have been lost in the last year, and a further third of companies expect to cut more staff in the next 12 months. And as the Honourable Member for Thirsk and Malton and from Southampton has suggested, rateable changes will affect the industry more. Will the government take into account these cumulative measures and actually do something positive for the solar industry?
Well, of course, I share the concerns he made about any job losses as a result of changes in the industry. I've made some points earlier about the way in which the industry is changing, and I noticed that the report itself picked out the resilience of the industry and its capacity to respond to change, including potentially offered by Brexit. I would say simply this, that it's noticeable that many schemes are already quite close to being viable without subsidy in certain circumstances, and the key now is to move further towards that. We will, as I have said, look very closely at the issues raised on valuation that he's highlighted today.
Mr. Speaker.
With your permission, Mr. Speaker, I will answer this question together with 15. The government has made it very clear that we are open for business, absolutely determined to make a success of leaving the EU, and that includes seizing the opportunity to negotiate our own trade agreements and be a powerful and positive force for free trade.
Andrew Bingham.
I thank Ronald Fan for that answer, and I believe leaving the EU offers great opportunities for British business going forward. However, we must be aware of certain threats. And my constituent Steve Ottey has a business called High and Low Technical, which works in the area of explosions protection. It's very complex, but it has a registration system with the EU Commission. He's concerned that being outside the EU will prevent this registration, which in turn could hamper his business. So all I'm saying, would my honourable friend be vigilant on issues like this, so as well as providing the opportunities, we can also be ready to counter the threats.
Well, Can, I thank my honourable friend for that question. And let me assure him we want to make sure that the new relationship with the EU works for British businesses. And his constituent, Mr. Ottey, raises an important point about the need to seek some clarity about ongoing recognition of the compliance certification that UK notified bodies grant. This is an important issue. We're very aware of it. And if his constituent would welcome a call or a meeting to discuss it, I'm sure we can arrange it.
Al McCartney.
Speaker, does my honourable friend welcome, like me, the latest trade figures which showed that despite the crystal ball gazing do merchants like the Romaniac TUC predicted, our exports grew by over 800 million in July after the positive EU referendum result? And can he confirm the number of businesses he and his ministers have spoken to who are positive about our economic future outside of the EU?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I welcome any good news for the British economy, and I agree 100%, and I voted Remain, that we should be talking up our prospects and not talking them down. What I would simply say in terms of the conversations we've had, the chairman that I have spoken to have, yes, expressed some desire for more certainty, but were fundamentally optimistic about local prospects and very keen to get on with it.
Gwyn.
But there is a British jurisdiction that is entirely accessed by road, by air and by sea through another European Union member state, and that is the British Overseas Territory of Gibraltar. They are absolutely of the opinion they need to retain access to the single European market. What discussions has he had with Gibraltarian counterparts to make sure that that happens?
As the Secretary of State made it clear, we're actively engaged in a whole series of conversations with stakeholders and international partners, and I'm sure Gibraltar will be part of that.
Speaker, would the Minister or his team meet with the leader of the official opposition in Northern Ireland, i.e. my party, where we have an excellent document now on the vision for the future of Northern Ireland after Brexit?
Well, the short answer is yes. As Secretary of State, we're very keen to harvest all opinions and ideas on how we meet this fundamental and exciting challenge about how we transition to a post-Brexit world in a way that works for British business.
Topical questions. Neil Parish.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Number one.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Department of Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy was formed on the 14th of July, and it's my great honour to serve as its first Secretary of State. Over the summer, rapid progress has been made in joining up responsibilities for business, energy, climate change, science, innovation and consumer affairs, and in creating a new focus on industrial strategy. This is a powerful department, up to the task of promoting a competitive, low-carbon economy, and furthermore, an economy that works for everyone. As part of an excellent team of ministers and officials, I will continue to work both locally and globally on the challenges ahead.
Neil Parish.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Swansea Bay Tidal Lagoon, along with Cardiff Bay, Newport and Bridgewater Bay, has the potential to create huge energy, second highest rise and fall in the world's tides. And so if we can, how is the feasibility study going? When are we going to get a result? Because we need long-term funding for a project which could create 8% of our energy.
Well, I'm grateful for the question from my honourable friend. My understanding is that the feasibility study is being undertaken. I haven't received its final conclusions yet. At that point, I will look, I think, with the same interest as my honourable friend at its conclusion.
Gillesterson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The European Commission says that Apple should have to cough up £13 billion in taxes for earnings generated across the EU, including, of course, in the UK. Most UK businesses pay their fair share of taxes and expect all other businesses, large or small, to do the same. So can the Secretary of State confirm that he is doing everything he can to make sure the very biggest companies pay up, and also that we receive our share of the £13 billion Apple tax pie?
I think the honourable gentleman makes a reasonable point. There are responsibilities that come with being in business in this country and paying taxes to contribute to the public services that we enjoy as part of that. And he does have my assurance that we will make sure that we pursue the correct tax by all companies that locate here.
Mr. McCartney.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On Thursday, I'll be chairing a panel at the Enterprise, Innovation and Northern Powerhouse Conference at Huddersfield University. But in developing an industrial strategy, does the Secretary of State agree with me that we need to do more to win hearts and minds in the North about these big projects? More examples of regional procurement, like the HS2 College in Doncaster, and more jobs in the North, particularly with maybe HS2 starting from the North?
Well, the passion with which my honourable friend makes his point attests to the opportunities that there are in our approach on industrial strategy to make sure that growth is across the United Kingdom, including in Yorkshire. He will know that I have taken a great interest in this in my previous roles, and he can be absolutely assured that that interest will not be diminishing in the months ahead.
The current review of network charging for small embedded generators such as Slough Heat and Power will mean huge increases in the costs of these small generators. Is the department determined to just make energy generation the preserve of big businesses?
No, I categorically refute that. What we have to do is strike a balance between looking to drive down the costs of all sources of low carbon generation while making sure we deliver best value for consumers and taxpayers, and that occasionally requires reviews of tariffs.
Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can the Secretary of State assure me that the government will seek to enhance and promote British strengths in financial services, science, in digital, creative and cultural, and in the tourism sectors, all particularly important to my constituency as we approach European negotiations?
Yes, I can certainly assure the honourable member that we plan to put at the heart of our industrial science strategy, science and innovation. Financial services as part of the services sector will also play an important part in our strategy as it's developed in coming weeks.
Patrick Grady.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Last week, the government committed to ratifying the Paris Climate Agreement. Will it commit to do so before the next UNFCCC Conference of Parties in Morocco, so that the government can play a full and leading role at that summit?
Mr. Speaker, we helped shape the Paris Agreement. We signed it. We've said, and the Prime Minister has confirmed, we will ratify it as soon as possible, and that remains our position.
Maggie Through.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Britain is undoubtedly a world leader in scientific research. With this in mind, would my right honourable friend detail what role bioscience will play in the government's industrial strategy?
The government's industrial strategy will position the UK as a global leader for the 21st century. The UK bioeconomy is worth £220 billion in GVA, 13.6% of total GVA in 2014, with potential to grow by 13% by 2030, and we're going to continue to invest strongly in it.
Paul Bromfield.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Secretary of State is a thoughtful man who, I believe, is serious about regional growth. Will he assure me that I'm right in this understanding by cancelling his predecessor's decision to centralise his department's policy functions in London, thereby, among other things, maintaining and building on its important presence in Sheffield?
I would say to the honourable gentleman, I'm certainly very attached to the work that is done in Sheffield and the highly valued colleagues that we have there. The decision has been made some time ago, and many changes have been made. As we sort out the responsibilities of different parts of the department, I look carefully at what Sheffield can provide.
To help community energy schemes to make them viable.
As explained in previous questions, Mr. Speaker, the government is very committed to the deployment of renewable energy and has had considerable success in that. Of course, the feed-in tariff has been central to that.
Angela Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The expansion of Heathrow would create a demand for 370,000 tonnes of steel and secure 700 steel jobs. So it's not only in the interests of the UK economy more generally that we expand Heathrow, but specifically it's in the interests of the manufacturing sector. So why don't we just get on with it, have the vote here in the chamber and get on with the building of the third runway?
Well, what I would say to the honourable lady is that across many different forms of infrastructure, we do need an upgrade in the infrastructure we have, and that will have very important benefits to the steel industry, including in Sheffield.
Mr. Speaker, it's hugely encouraging that the government is developing this comprehensive industrial strategy, which I believe will give a great boost in the confidence in our steel industry. Can the Minister update the House what early discussions he's had with the industry about the role of the INIT?
Well, I have had extensive discussions, as he would understand, over the summer with the steel industry. It's very important that we should have a sustainable future for what has been and is a very important sector in our economy.
Henry.
The huge Hanjin shipping line has gone into receivership, leaving between 12 and 16 billion pounds worth of goods at sea. The inability to dock has projected an impact on UK retail, particularly during Christmas trading. More importantly, UK seafarers...
Sentence, very briefly. We've got a lot to get through.
Seafarers and the Scots cadets are stuck at sea. What action is he taking to assist retailers? And will he speak to his foreign and Commonwealth counterpart to get help for our seafarers?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I will take that away. I do know that in terms of the immediate impact, the local enterprise partnership are engaged with making sure that the delays are going to be overcome on the site.
All House.
Speaker, many will commend the Secretary of State for putting science front and centre of his industrial strategy, and in particular life sciences. But I wonder, as he plans the future for that industry, whether he could work closely with the Secretary of State for Health, given that the attitude towards innovation of the industry's largest customer, the National Health Service, will be critical to the growth of that industry in the decades to come.
I certainly will, and I was very interested to read my honourable friend's article in the newspaper earlier this week, making this point. It is very important that government takes a collective approach on this, and I've already had discussions in the past with my right honourable friend, the Health Secretary, as to how we can make the most of the NHS in life science.
Speaker, will the government look again at the unjust 50% government clawback from the mine workers' pension scheme surplus?
Well, Mr. Speaker, I will certainly take that away, and I'm happy to meet with the Honourable Lady if she'd like to inform me more about that outside this chamber.
Mr. David Nuttall.
Speaker, does the department intend to develop a single industrial strategy for the whole country, or have different industrial strategies for different parts of the country?
Well, my honourable friend makes a good point. It seems to me essential that, of course, we should have a strategy for the whole country, but place is incredibly important. The challenges of the places like Greater Manchester are different from those of Cornwall, and it seems to me that we should reflect the different strengths and opportunities more clearly in how we do business as a government.
Blackford.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the Minister accept that the changes to subsidy for the CHP biomass plans have been brought in too quickly, and a longer grace period before implementation should have been granted? BSW Timber in my constituency, who are doing what the government want by investing in renewable technology, stand to lose up to £3 million in support. Will the Minister meet with me to discuss these changes and talk about what...
Let me just say, in all kindness and charity to the honourable gentleman, that he was at his best at the end of the first sentence. A blue pencil should thereafter have been applied. Minister.
Well, I think the Honourable Gentleman is a former Treasurer of the SNP, so he knows a bit about the challenge of cost control, and he knows that in the context of these changes, our overriding priority is to provide better value for the tax payer. The changes will apply to new participants on the basis when they fully qualify for the scheme, and those who fully qualified on or after 1st of August will be subject to the change. If there's a specific constituent case that he wishes to raise with me, I'm happy to meet him.
The Minister's very good for colleagues' knee muscles, or not, as the case may be. Peter Aldous.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Brexit provides the UK with an opportunity to be the global leader in such energy technologies as offshore wind, energy storage and carbon capture and storage. Can the Minister confirm that the government will reset energy policy so that the country can take full advantage of this great opportunity?
My honourable friend is absolutely right that one of the historic strengths of the United Kingdom is in areas such as marine engineering and power engineering, which is at the heart of the opportunities around the world as many countries look to develop their capacity in renewable energy. So this is a big opportunity, especially for his constituents.
Melanie On.
Can the Secretary of State guarantee that all employment protections currently enjoyed by British workers will be maintained post-Brexit, and does he back my bill to do just that?
We will certainly look carefully at the Honourable Lady's bill. Employment protections are an absolute priority for this government.
Nigel Adams.
The financial viability of many low-carbon on-site heat and power technologies is under threat due to the reduction in the biogas tariff. Would his department consider having a separate tariff rate for the new gasification technologies rather than being treated the same as other technologies such as anaerobic digestion?
Well, as my own friend knows, the government is reviewing how the renewable heat incentive works, and has been forced to make some changes to tariffs in order to provide better value for the taxpayers' money. But I'm more than happy to sit down and talk with him about his suggestion.
Odell.
Mr. Speaker, I welcome the Secretary of State to his place, as I do my colleague who I know will be a doughty champion for the brief. Mr Speaker, a new report from Professor Alex Kemp of Aberdeen University has found the re-engineering of the UK continental shelf fiscal regime may be necessary before we can reach the North Sea's full potential. Can the Minister tell us what further support the Government will bring forward for the oil and gas sector in the autumn statement?
A very productive set of discussions in Aberdeen during the summer with representatives of the oil and gas sector. The industry centred in Aberdeen, but involving other places in the country, is very important. We've made big changes to the fiscal regime, as she knows, which have been beneficial, but we will continue to have those discussions.
The State earlier described himself as being on an historic task of writing the industrial strategy, but surely if he studies history he will know that industrial strategies written predominantly by civil servants and ministers tend to fail. Will he say what steps he will take to engage businesses in Lancashire to make sure that we have a successful strategy?
Certainly will, and I'm grateful for my honourable friend's point. It is obviously the case that an industrial strategy for the country should not be instructions from ministers or civil servants to businesses and the rest of the country. We are engaging with businesses all across the country and in every different sector to make sure they have the support that they need.
Johnny Reynolds. Does the Secretary of State believe it is conceivable that this country could negotiate full membership of the single market without accepting freedom of movement?
Well, Mr. Speaker, the honourable gentleman entices me into making early decisions on what our negotiating mandate should be. I think it is the sensible step to be careful and to put together our negotiating brief, and to do that in consultation with businesses and every part of the country.
Vickers.
Speaker, I welcome the Government's continuing commitment to the Northern Powerhouse. Will the Secretary of State meet with me and Council leaders to discuss how we can maximise the contribution Northern Lincolnshire can make to the project and reap maximum benefit?
I'm always keen to meet the honourable gentleman, despite the fact that I've moved from one department to another. I hope the invitation to fish and chips in Cleethorpes still stands.